Delphi Grade 11, Lesson 4 of Databases. Good day everybody, welcome to the fourth lesson of Grade 11 Delphi of Databases. We will look at how to query a database for non-SQL. Let's begin. The contents of this video. We will look at some terms, specifically what a query is and what conditions are. We will then look at an algorithm that we will be using. We will then look at some examples, specifically examples with no conditions, single condition, multiple conditions, and a sum query. Let's look at some terms. Query. Query is a process, message, or string that is used to request or retrieve data from a database. An example. Retrieve a list of products from a database with a price of 14.95 Rand. Or select all from table where condition equals true. This is an example of a SQL statement. Let's look at the conditions. Conditions is used to test if the record needs to be added to the result of the query. Conditions follow normal logic operators, for example, and, or, not, greater, or less than. Let's look at the algorithm that we will be using. We will start at the beginning. So begin, then we set our cursor to the first record in the database or table. We will then fetch that record. We will check if the record meets our conditions. If it does, we will add the result or we will print it out. We then move the cursor to the next line or record. If the record does not meet our conditions, we will simply move the cursor to the next line. We will then check if after we have moved the cursor to the next line, we will check if the cursor is at the end of the database. If not, we fetch a new record. If it is, we end our query. This is an example of a linear search method. There are other interesting methods you can look at, but that is beyond the high school scope. Warning, this is a simplified algorithm. The actual implementation takes a bit more programming. Let's look at the examples we will follow. So we will list all the records in Cape Town shop. We will list all the records in Durban shop with the product name equal to cat snack. We will then list all the records in Mikado shop with a weight of between 20 inclusive and 0 exclusive. Lastly, we will count all the products currently in Pretoria shop. And that's just all our field names in each of the tables. And here's our example that we will now be looking at in our 4 buttons. So what we'll do is we'll click on a button and then it will do the example that was listed in the slides. Also, a note, if you're unsure of how to link your Delphi with your database, please look at our video that covers that. Let's look at the first example. So just as a note, setup output is a helper function I wrote just to make all the output a bit more clear for us. Don't worry, that should be covered a little bit later. It's quite easy to do it and it helps just to make your code a bit neater. But let's focus on the content of this video. Okay, so for this example, we just have to list all the records in Cape Town shop. So what we'll do first is we'll say dm.table Cape Town shop dot first. So now we move our cursor to the first position in the database. Next, let's do the while loop. So we'll say while not dm dot end of file do. So what this does is it says while there are still lines in our database in that table, in table Cape Town shop, execute this bit of code. Okay, so and then what we'll say is we'll say reddit output dot lines dot add. Then in here you'll start adding all of your lines. So you'll say dm dot table Cape Town dot field by name. Then in here you will place your field names. Our first field name is product ID. Then you give it a data type. Data type, it needs to be string, so we say as string. Now, hashtag 9 is the ASCII code or the way that Delphi interprets a tab. So when you hit tab, it's actually 9. So we use hashtag 9 just to say to it, we want a tab here. It's just to give a bit better spacing. And then you just do this for all of your fields in your database or all the fields that you want to display to the user. Now, this is going to take a bit of time to type it out, so I'm just going to copy it from there we go. So this is how it should look like. So as you'll see, it's dm.table.field by name and then the field name and dot as string, and then here's all our hashtags. So now next thing we need to do is we need to say dm.table Cape Town shop dot next. Now this line is extremely important. This allows you to move to the next line in the database. If you don't do that, you will go into an infinite loop because you will never reach the end of your database. You will sit at the first line forever. So that is very important to say dm.table Cape Town shop.next. So let's save and run it. Okay, so here's our program. If we say example 1, there you'll see our column names. That's that helper function kicking in to do these first lines. Then over here is our product ID and all of our data that's in the database. Our names, product price, order dates, quantity left, and our weight. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the second example. So again, here's our helper function. This example requires us to list all the records in Durban shop with the product name cat snack. So let's begin. So again, we say dm.table Durban shop dot first, and again our while loop, while not I'll not end of file, do begin. And now in here we say if and say product name dot cat snack. Okay, so what this line basically says is if dm.table Durban shop dot field by name, if our product name of this table for each record, if there is one that is equal to cat snack, then we will enter this if. And in this if, we will do the same as above here. We can almost copy all of this. And then just with the alteration of, we just change Cape Town shop to Durban shop, all of these. Then again, we say dm.table Durban shop dot next. Let's compile it. Busy compiling. And there we see there's our helper function again kicking in. Okay, so it's two. Product name is cat snack. So there's only one product that's name is cat snack, and there's all its fields that you wanted to list. If you did not want to list, let's say for example, weight, we don't want to list the cat snack weight, we just can take that out and just put that one back. Then we save, compile it. And then if you look, weight is still there due to the helper function still including it, but you will see weight has got no value there at the end. It's 14 is my quantity left, weight does not have a value. Okay, so let's move on to our third example. Here's our helper function again. And this time, just to make it a bit easier for ourselves, I've declared a double variable called current weight that we will be using to do the multiple condition check with. So for this example, we have to list all the records in Mercado Shop with a weight of between 20 inclusive and 0 exclusive. So let's quickly start. So we say dm dot table Mercado Shop dot first. So while dm dot now just to make it easier, we're going to use our little variable at the top there. We'll say equals dm dot table. So we need to say as float instead of as string because we are taking the value and we're putting it into a double or float variable. So we do not say as string, we say as float, so we can put it into a double or float variable. Okay. Then we say if current weight greater than 0 and let's just put brackets around this so it's a bit neater for ourselves, and current weight less than or equal to 20, then begin end. And in this if we put our output, which I'm just going to copy over, it's exactly the same as the other examples. So it's Mercado Shop dot field by name, all its fields and all the hashtag 9s. So it says if current weight is greater than 0 and less than or equal to 20, output this. Now again, remember, very important, this line, table Mercado Shop dot next. You will have many infinite loops if you forget that. If you forget that line, let's run it. No compile errors, cool. So let's pull it over, and if we go to example 3, here we will see weight is between 20 and 0, where 20 is included and 0 is excluded. Because if you think about it, nothing can have a weight of 0. Okay, let's close here. Okay, so now onto our last example, the sum query. Again, I've created a little variable for ourselves there, which is a double. So we have to count all the products currently in Pretoria Shop. Probably didn't have to use a double, but let's just make it for in case there's a half a product somewhere or a quarter product somewhere. So again, we say dm dot table Pretoria Shop dot first. We say while not dm dot table Pretoria Shop dot end of file do begin end. Then in here we say, let's first initialize our sum variable to 0, so we know it's 0 when we start. That's not, you do that for in case there is no records in Pretoria Shop, then we do still have at least sum equal to something. So then in here we will say sum equals sum plus dm.table Pretoria Shop dot field by name, and in there we will say quantity left, that is the remaining quantity that is left in that store of each product. We want to count all the products that are currently in the store. Let me say as float again. Now, important here, just note that I'm not using the helper function, as I am not going to print out all of the fields. I'm just going to print out one value. So just take note of that. Then again, very important, we say dm.table next, so we can get the next line. And then we just output something very simple like this, for example, where we say read output dot lines dot add sum of all the products, float to string. Remember, we need to convert the float back into a string so we can display it. And then in here we say sum, and then let's save it and run it. If we pull it over and we say example 4, there is in Pretoria shop at the given moment there is 166 products. There you go, there's all our examples completed. So now we have looked at how a non-conditional query looks, how a single conditional query looks, how a multiple conditional query looks, and how a agitation or a sum query looks. Now you can also start, if you've got multiple tables, you can start doing a query inside of a query, but we will leave that to you to explore and experiment. Try combining different things, try to have many conditions, have few conditions, try getting the user's input and using that as a condition. All of these are very good exercises for you to practice searching a database for a given value.